Slowly but surely, China is moving to services like IT, e-commerce and logistics, and away from products to fuel the economy. Laurie Young is the author and also businessman who has written this new book, From Products to Services. And Laurie, thanks for joining us today. Can I start by asking you, where is China really going in services, as you see it?
Firstly, the change is already affecting the Chinese economy. As economies become more successful, their citizens invest and spend their money in things that they couldn't afford before, like education, health, leisure time, tourism. And as a result of that, for some years now, there has been spending within China and also other parts of Asia as economies have become more successful.
But then China's coming from a very low base, isn't it, where it comes to services? Is that going to be changing?
As I understand the announcement the Chinese government made just over a year ago now, about 42% of the current Chinese economy is service-based, and they want to take that to 50% within 10 years. And that is a real change. It means investment in services like logistics, international technology services in a similar way that the Indian government has invested in that, and professional services like lawyers, accountants, architects and others.
So when will we be seeing recognizable brands actually springing up on the Chinese mainland?
Whether they develop very, very quickly or not, I think one of the things that the whole of East Asian business could do is invest in the development of brands. If the Chinese economy could create brands that are respected and bought around the world, in a similar way that service brands like P&O or British Airways or, dare I say, Starbucks or McDonald's have been successful for Western economies, then I think that's a real engine of wealth for the future Chinese economy.
What do you see as Hong Kong's role in the development of brands, particularly on the mainland?
Hong Kong is a hugely successful service economy. There are skills here in service businesses that have been around for many decades. Skills in terms of professional services, skills in terms of financial services, leisure, of course, and other things. And I think that Hong Kong is well placed to play a role in helping manufacturing companies and legislators and policy makers to understand how different a service industry and a service business is. The key issue, though, is the issue of transition. The experience of the West is that product companies that have moved into services have found it a tortuous and a difficult journey. So it's not just, I am in a service business, I'm an accountant or I am a lawyer and therefore I'm an expert on services. The key issue is how manufacturing companies and a manufacturing economy can transition into more of a service-based industry.
So it must be particularly difficult to develop brands in an economy that's so reliant on production.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to say the experience of the West is always directly relevant, but the evidence is that where large manufacturing industries, such as the computer industry with famous names like IBM and Hewlett-Packard and others, or heavy engineering like GE and ABB, when they have reached for service as a means of increasing the wealth of their companies, they've had to go through an enormous change. It changes almost everything, Martin. It changes the way you create things, it changes the operations of your company, it changes finances, it changes marketing, and it changes sales, and it changes branding.
So what sort of time frame do you see this transition, if you like, from production to services?
I think you could argue that many successful product sales go through a service experience. So a fabulous product brand, whether it's a drink or a piece of clothing, whatever it is sold through a retail service. And so increasingly, as the world markets become more integrated, service delivery and service businesses are important for experiencing even products.
So really putting you on the spot, Laurie, where do you see brands really developing in China? Do you see it in the IT industry, for example?
I think things are starting quietly. There are already service businesses do back office work for IT businesses. I understand there are businesses that are quite successful, for instance, in processing the tax forms of American individuals. here in China. So it is starting gradually, and I can see a route map, if you'll forgive the analogy, similar to the one the Japanese took in the last half of the 20th century. They started with very modest steps in the export of consumer products and building their brands. And as they gained experience in international markets, their products became better quality, more reliable, and they were able to ravage the international markets of the West. And Japanese names like Sony and Honda became famous because of this progressive incremental step in quality. I think there is a huge opportunity for Chinese business to take the same progressive steps in improving their service offer and penetrating worldwide Western markets.
And presumably Hong Kong will have a first mover advantage where it comes to developing those brands on the mainland. Absolutely.
Hong Kong is a name that I think these days is respected around the world in terms of its financial services experience and other areas. As I've tried to say in the book, service business is very, very different to manufacturing business. Very different. Almost everything has to change. And there are the skills here to craft propositions that will appeal to businesses right around the world and add value to core commodities and core products.